I'm going into the challenges, I basically think like monitoring to start with. The reason behind is that I feel monitoring is the core of one of the core engine that drives the overall reliability. And since I love driving or traveling, I like to think monitoring in a very different perspective. You have cars with fancy dashboards, which gives you a lot of information, right? Driving, what speed you are in, what's the outside temperature, where you are heading for, when you can refuel. So these are a lot of information that you get from your car, which actually gives you information about how you should drive, and how you should make your progress, where you need to stop. There are a lot of information that helps. Similarly, the monitoring is also a very core engine of SRE, which helps us, give direction in maneuvering where you need to go, and how you can control our target of reliability. So when the monitoring started, I would like to quote, again from Google, Tom, who is Google SRE, former Google SRE, and now in Stack Overflow. What Tom said initially, monitoring is, a service is not a service if it is not getting monitored. That is way back in 2003, when industry was more of traditional and thinking monitoring to be part of the whole operations. Over the year, like in SRE Con in 2015, what he said is, again, a service is not a service which is not monitored against an SLA. So basically, he brought in a new concept of SLA-based monitoring. So what he means to say that if a monitoring where you get an alert or you get a pager and you just go and fix it based on your timeline, or you get a warning message, you ignore it, you just don't give any value to that. That is not how we should operate. Our monitoring should be SLA-based, which means that when you're bringing in reliability to the core of SRE, you need to ensure that, hey, there is a CPU alert. How long I will take for my system to get back to the normal CPU range? If there is a alert in my network, how long I should take to get back to the the normal network traffic? So there are like core concept of reliability comes into SLA-based monitoring, where the service level is tied to the different parameters of monitoring to give us the benefit of running a software reliably. I like to invite our observability lead, Amit, to go more over the monitoring, and then I'll take it over from him. Over to you, man.
Thank you, Ansuman. Thank you. So as Ansuman mentioned, like he loves to drive and he always keep a watch on the meters which are displaying the information, like what is the temperature of the in the radiator, does he need a pause or he can continue driving, and what is the current RPM or at what speed he is driving. So these metrics are very important in each and every stage of the life. If we are driving, or we are monitoring, or if we are a SRE engineer, or whatever we are, if we are at home, we can also keep a track on the temperature of our AC. So everything is data and information that we have to play with. So here we will talk more about the monitoring and how today's monitoring have been transformed to meet the SRE principles. So if you look at the yellow circle, it's true that a decade ago we used to look at the up and down checks only as a monitoring. We call up and down is a monitoring. I hope most of us have used Nagios as a monitoring tool, first monitoring tool. That was my first monitoring tool, which I have used, Nagios. So we only focus on the up and down, but in recent years, the monitoring tools have also evolved greatly to the point where people no longer monitor just the up and down, or you can say the external pings. I hope most of us have used pingdom. So we go and buy pingdoms everywhere. Let's have our site or application monitored by pingdom. Let's use site availability checks. But things have changed in last couple of years, I will say. So now also based on the demands, the tools have also evolved themselves along with the technologies, the traditions. systems, like if you talk about the traditional systems, like we used to have the agent sitting on the servers and doing the monitoring. Now we have microservices. So tools have evolved themselves to monitor those microservices, so the serverless architecture, so that can be monitored. And the main focus is still on the customer, or I will say the end user experience, how us end user sitting on the glass accessing our application, feeling the speed, or how he's getting the response from our the server or the stack. So the main key things, part of the observability, are where we should focus are the metrics, the logs, the traces, I will say the errors or the and even the latency and the traffic. And all these things, the metrics on all these things compromise. And so we have to look at the correlation of all these things as well. Like we cannot have a alert coming from Nagios or Zabbix, and different second alert is coming from Splunk, and we have a single SRE engineer who is sitting and supporting at that particular time. So we need to have a consolidated view on our monitoring. So the new, I will say the new thing coming a few years ago, like the alert correlation, how we can do the correlation of the events generated from different systems, and we can have a single alert or a single ticket for a problem area. So overall, like a combination of all these things is, we call it as a 360-degree monitoring. And we have a different, and to achieve that 360-degree monitoring, we need to deploy multiple tools at different layers to keep a watch on the metrics, the logs, and the traces, so that we can meet our SLAs. So you can see on my screen, like we have different monitoring layers and how they are associated with the different different tools. We have associated different tools for different layers, and these tools can be used, can be, I will say, can be leveraged in our SRE world. So if we talk about the event management tool, I think many of us have heard about the PagerDuty, Obsgeny. So these are the tools which we use for event triggers, to do the tracing of the events in case there is any issue. So these tools will help us to give a call to our SRE engineers so that they can handle the issues within SLAs. So we have divided multiple tools and different layers. Like for application monitoring, we have different set of tools. For end user monitoring, we have Site 24/7, Make Pingdom. Same way for synthetic, we use New Relic, Dynatrace, and Site 24/7. Log monitoring, we use Splunk. We also have LogOps. And for infrastructure, we all know Zabbix and Nagios are the best tool, open source tool, which are available in the market. Same way for security also, we always look at the web solutioning and all those things so that we can protect our application from the DDoS attacks. So having all these kind of monitorings, we can achieve our SREs. I can say we can keep a track on our error rates. So it's recommended to have such kind of monitoring in place whenever you are thinking of transforming to SRE world. Hand over to you, Ansuman.
Thanks, Amit. So, as you mentioned, the 360-degree monitoring is one of the very important piece right now for having a view around having a view of what is happening around you. There are multiple areas of your applications interacting with different different layers, and how these different layers are behaving. You need to know that to make sure you are controlling your operations. And when you're controlling your operations, the control basically comes from your service level agreement. So when you talk about service level agreement, I think Mayank also initially told, service level agreement, we all know pretty much. I don't need to explain to everyone. I think whoever is in the current IT world, everyone almost knows what is a service level agreement. And service level agreement, typically a contract which is measured across different service parameters that we are going to deliver. But then there are a couple of more layers below this top layer. When you peel it off and you find it, actually the service level agreement again has service level objectives, which is SLO, which basically talks about in the SLA, when you agree a service to different services that you deliver, and you have a certain agreement that I will achieve this. So how will you achieve this? These are your objectives. So those, how to achieve this is basically your service level. What are you going to achieve is called your service level objectives, and those objectives is something that will always drive us, thinking how we are going to achieve that, and that will be the core engine that we need to follow. And then we have a service level indicators. So when you are trying to achieve an objective, then there may be misses or there may be chances that we are missing that. How we can pull back our trigger and come back to that is something that those indicators will give us always. And there are various indicators that we follow. There may be a quantitative measure of some aspects. My CPU is crossing 75% utilization always, or the number of errors in application is crossing 80% level always. My code quality is crossing 80% level always. So these are the quantitative measures, and there are qualitative measures. What are also the different quality that you are measuring inside the quality, in your project. And there are there are some functional measures that we do, non-functional measures also we do, like page uptime, how your latency is, how different errors are. But when you're talking about all these things, you can see that I iterated a word called error. So and or error rate or error budget. So what is error budget basically? When you're having a SLA, typically if I tell you, so you say I'll have 99% availability on certain areas, or I have 99% uptime of the site, which means I have 1% with me out of the 100% is something called error budget. So which is basically a elbow room for me to experiment around, how I can improve. So which initially Mayank also mentioned, if you remember, that we have to bring in new features rapidly. So this 1% error budget typically gives us the elbow room to play around that, as well as it also gives us elbow room around if there is something going wrong in the system. We need to ensure that we are having within this a 1% error budget. So this error budget is something where the SRE's development and operation team, combination of that skill of SRE team works towards. Whenever we are crossing that error budget in any of our cases, we always need to ensure that we again bring back our error budget within the error budget target. That is where our automation comes into play. We need to have enough automation in system to bring in those errors within the error budget. So when you have error budget and service level agreement with us, and to do that, when I'm talking about automation, which eventually means that I'm talking about reducing manual efforts. And when you're talking about reducing manual efforts, typically the subject of in SRE world, we call it as toil reduction. So I hope most of you have heard of this word called toil reductions, in your day-to-day life. And toil reduction typically talks about how you will reduce your manual efforts inside the project, so that you bring in more efficiency and more velocity into your release and a quality product into the market. And that is where that will only be possible if we are eliminating toil and focusing shift our focus towards making the system more reliable, making the quality of the product better, and bringing in new features to the market. If we are spending most of our time in operating in a manual way, we may not be able to achieve that target. Why I'm stressing on that bit, because if any of you like me worked a decade back, and you must be knowing that that was the time when the software complexity or IT complexity was not that much. And what you used to have is the roles are segregated after a different team, and most of the operations were manual. IT operations, you'll find like doing a server installation to a patching, adding a storage, or software also in the space a similar way. We're always doing things are manual. And with the last couple of years, the way the technology changed and the way the IT complexity improved, the demand from the customers improved, the agility that requires, and DevOps is facilitating that. There is a time right now to, have more, more automation into a place. And for that, we need to always, get rid of the toil or the manual effort. And that to do that, we have to first analyze or go through the different tasks we have, and you have to prioritize them, which need to go first for the set of batches to go for the toil reduction, and then implement them, and then once it is done, that will reduce the effort. And again, we go and identify the next set of tasks that we need to prioritize, and again you have to implement, so that this toil reduction should not be a one-time process, but it should be a continuous process in your SRE life cycle.
I have a question for Ansuman. So Ansuman, like you talk about the toil. So what is your top, how you will start working on the toil reduction? So what will be your sources for the top sources?
As I said, we are operating in whatever project that we did, transformation also, we are so far operating in a model which is always talking about doing a lot of stuff manually. So when you start identifying the different activities that we do, we basically look into the list of things that we are doing currently, and a first set of, suppose in our scope of work, and go to the SOW, what are the activities that we are doing, and on those activities, what we are currently doing manually, and what are in the system already automated. And then from those list of activities that we are doing manually, we need to prioritize based on the objective that we set for ourselves, or the service level objective that we have, which are the things that to be picked first and prioritized first to get into a automation pipeline to bring in the immediate efficiency that we need. And once those set of activities gets into this, then we'll go to the next set of activities from the list again and revisit the list. And again, we prioritize based on the business need as well as your service level objective at that point of time, and again start the toil. So as I said, the toil reduction should be in a continuous process in the overall SRE life cycle to bring in efficiency always. Maybe you can measure it in a monthly basis or quarterly basis based on your, the way you want to run your operations. But it is good to measure how you're reducing toil regularly, which will give you which will give you always a boost in your, doing the work, because it will always give you some extra energy that yes, I'm moving in the right direction.
So do you think like doing this exercise quarterly or half yearly, which one will be a beneficial thing for us?
So I think that when you start initially, this process, we start with a quarterly one. Monthly is very tough target to meet, knowing that you have a lot of other operational things running with you. So it will always be better to go with quarterly. And as I say, when after a couple of iterations of the cycle, you may observe that your manual efforts have reduced, or the new entry of manual efforts are not there. Then you can move this cycle to a half yearly cycle, which will give you room to do other feature development and all. We talked about SLA, and we talked about toil, we talked about error budget, monitoring. So I think everyone here who are part of IT operations or even the development, we all know the term about root cause analysis that we do day in, day out. And that is kind of a core of our work life to have. Everyone always know what is RCA. Every company will have a definite template for them to draft the RCA. Maybe different projects will have a different way to have the RCA being documented and RCA being tracked, and P1, P2 will have a different way of timeline or SLA to deliver RCA. But I'm not more stressing on that fact. But what I'm talking about is a concept that I have encountered in my journey in the IT industry, that a decade back or more, it was usually, like I said, different teams. There will be application team, there will be a infrastructure team, there will be a inside infrastructure, there will be a middleware infrastructure team, there will be a operating system or OS level infrastructure, or network level infrastructure team, core infrastructure team. So there are different segregation of teams within the organization, within the project itself. And I feel like it was more due to, as I said, the complexity of the IT was not much, and the leverage that the project used to get is more to have this bandwidth to play around, provide root cause analysis or fixes. However, over the period, like as I said, like in last couple of years, with the improvement of the technology or improvement of the IT complex, the increase in IT complexity, what we are facing that we need to do things quick, we need to fix things quickly, we need to have a permanent fix, we need to bring in stability or reliability, and that is where the site reliability comes into picture. We need to have a concept more or less towards blameless, RCA. So what is blameless RCA? Earlier, what used to happen if there is an issue, then we used to say like it's an application related issue, or it is an infrastructure issue, it is a network issue, it is a database issue, and everyone was working in silos. They need to bring them in a day or two. The delivery manager has to bring everyone into a room and then have some sessions, and then you'll come out with some of the RCAs, and that will be more or less again pointing towards others and refinement goes. I think those kind of time is gone. We need to have a blameless RCA because SRE comprises of the skill which is in a bridge between the development and operations. So a skill that require both. Hence, the people here need to have blameless RCA into a mindset. Where when it comes to blameless RCA, we usually should not talk about it is an infrastructure or it is an application issue. More of here we have to own up the issue. We need to find out the root cause. We need to try to reproduce the issue, do a root cause analysis, have a workaround around to fix it, and to have an immediate fix. We need to come up with a permanent fix. How we can bring in automation to reduce that in future if there is something, a manual or a human error. So we need to think very broadly around the problem and come with an innovative approach to fix the issue and to ensure that this issue doesn't come in future.
Ansuman, I think this is one of the, I will say everyone has experienced this thing, and I have a poll for this topic as well, and it is live. I know blameless RCA is very common without having the data points so as you mentioned, like the incidents go on passing from one track to another track, like from the application to the infra to database and so on. So this is one thing. I think the things have changed and will keep on improving, and we will be having a data proven RCA which is a part of a transformation, I will say.
So we talked about all the points around the challenges, various challenges. But when you are talking about all of this, then the next thing that comes, then SRE, will the SRE be always on SRE? Yes, SRE should be always on SRE because reliability has no compromise. You need to have reliability always to the platform. Otherwise, you cannot deliver the experience to your customer or the end user without a reliability in your platform or application. And to do that, the always on SRE, there are various parts to it. As you say, like people is always the core of anything. So people part of always on SRE is very important. We need to have people with the right kind of skill, right kind of mindset, and since it is a bit of operations, it may require many a times longer working hour or working in different shifts. So people would have right kind of mindset to work on that kind of model, and then availability of the infrastructure and the application. So you can go to any cloud provider and see they always guarantee a 99.59 or 69 of availability. And similarly, the availability of application is equally important to have a seamless experience for the end user. And there are various technology right now available which gives us those edge to go for it. And applications are generally geographically scattered. It's not application, very rare, unless it is an intranet application, you won't find it within the organizations. Else the applications which are available over internet, they're all geographically available across the globe, unless there are some certain requirements of to be inside a particular geography. And then, as you know, scaling is one of the major challenge of our IT operations. And right now, with all the cloud providers are providing the auto scaling in their core feature, we'll always find that auto scaling in terms of infrastructure, when your load increases, is always taken care of. However, auto scaling on the people point of view cannot be done in that way. But unless until you plan for certain kind of event, it's like it's not always auto scaling for the people automatically happen, but auto scaling of infrastructure or other application capacity per se is possible. When I talk about event, I think whoever worked with e-commerce domain, you must be knowing there is a peak event or peak period early, which is starts around Black Friday, goes into Cyber Monday, and that whole week is kind of a week for everyone across the e-commerce industry due to the deals and sales. There is the load on the system goes up around 50 to 60%, and in some cases up to 80% more than the regular traffic. And that we've experienced in all of our e-commerce client, the load increasing multifold during this peak time. And how we'll plan for it? So we usually plan for peak events well in advance. And to be honest, like when it was a time of managing managed services, in a traditional way, we used to even plan for the hardware and infrastructure for this peak event 6 months to a year in advance, and 6 months to 8 months in advance. Plan for what are the infrastructure that come into place, how we'll have more storage into place, how we'll have more CPU, more memory, into the data center to handle it. With the SRE way of operating, with the auto scaling in place, that kind of part is taken care through our infrastructure as a code and DevOps CI/CD pipeline, as well as auto scaling infrastructure is taking care of that. However, the people point of view, as I said, we always plan a little bit in advance, and having extra bump capacity to the project to handle the load, because it will be running 24/7, and there may be issues around performance of the application if the load goes unexpectedly high. And disaster recovery, as all of us know, it's a core of the application which requires always on. We always have a disaster recovery with having the right kind of RTO and RPO in place to make sure how we can move between primary to disaster recovery and as and when the need comes. So to do that, I think there are some questions in the Q&A section that what kind of technology or what kind of knowledge that we require. I'll say, the SRE world is, as Mayank also mentioned, it's predated to DevOps, and it embeds almost the features around DevOps. So you can see the tool stack goes around a lot of areas, be it you're managing CI/CD using Circle CI or Jenkins, to having cloud providers like AWS, GCP, or Azure, or containers into Docker and Kubernetes and microservices application, to having your infra as a code run by Terraform, managing the logs by Elk or Splunk, your shift left approach in your DevOps pipeline to have your JMeter or JUnit giving you the right kind of stacks to right kind of stats to move ahead with the promoting the code to the next level. Similarly, you have managing the internal security around the different credentials they're managing using Vault, and packing the software using Packer, or you have your monitoring as system monitoring around AWS or Javix. So the tools and technology stack that is very vast, and it has evolved and it is evolving every day. You may not know like tomorrow what kind of new thing that will come and change the way that we are working, but it is evolving. And as I said, and also Mayank mentioned, as I said earlier as well, we need to evolve ourselves with the technology point of view and update ourselves with the new things, and may take the new features that some other new tools or technology providing to enable us to have the reliability maintained. When you are having the tools, technology, and processes or challenges that we have and how to mitigate that, we also need to look into various pitfalls that we always see in a SRE journey. And I like to say the one important thing that I always think of that when you're forming a SRE team, we typically have a habit that, or we always experience in our industry that we hear something new is coming up and it looks like a buzzword, and we say, let's implement it. And we just go ahead and rename our existing team that it's a SRE team. And whereas in the core of it, we are neither mitigating the challenges that we face in the journey, neither we have a principle around how we'll go to it. And there where we actually fail as a team to move into the SRE, because only renaming a team name will definitely not going to make you transform to a SRE ways of working. You need to have right kind of mindset, a cultural mindset change at the beginning. People should be inclined towards it before starting this journey. You need to have address around how you will address how you will handle the core principles, how you will handle the challenges. Then only diving into the SRE ways of journey will be helpful for the organization. However, when you are getting into that, many will be thinking, I can start a team, will it work? It's not. It's like SRE should always have a blessings of the technology leadership of the organization, because it's more of a methodology, and technology leadership is important to give the blessings, so that this will be implemented part of this will be taken care as part of their core journey, and everyone will be inclined towards that if there is a blessings of the technology leadership to adopt SRE, so that people also start thinking that it is important, and it is the way that we are going to work next, or a new way of working for us, and we should be inclined towards it. And when we are having both these things, we need to also think that SRE teams should have the ability to say no. And you must remember, like Mayank was talking about certain points around that Google at many a times has threatened and dismantled the SRE team, moving all the responsibility to the development team to get a feel about what SRE exactly is. And again, the result is the team has come back and they started in a collaborative way with a SRE mindset. So the team should have always say no if they find that the ways of operating, the principles of the SRE are not adhered. They should always say no, and they should not get into it. Otherwise, it will be simply taking of the ownership, or simply taking of the ownership without having any real accountability you can to deliver. So which will be a disaster for the SRE team to operate. Similarly, as I say, like collaboration is very important. So the SRE has a development and operations core of it. So there should be always a meaningful conversation between the development and operations team around SLOs, error budgets, which will be giving them moving back to the target of error budget, giving them achieving the service level objective, which will eventually lead to getting into the core of reliability. That is what the SRE means for.
Thank you, Ansuman, for covering so far. So I think you can continue with your experience. How you what's your total journey when you started working with the retail client, and how you did the transformation for that retail client?
Thanks, Amit. So as you rightly said, this is one of our transformation journey, which was around retail client. And why I picked this, because it was more of the challenges around that we faced, and it is one of the journey that was exciting for us because it gives us a true feeling of how we moved our managed services operation, which we started with this particular customer, and we are right now working in a SRE way. And this particular client was in a large retail giant with coffee industry in US, and they have a huge operations around, which I'll go to the stats later. And the magnitude of operations that they have, it requires a system which operates 24/7. You may feel like why so? So they're the people who sell the coffee vending machines with the pots. And as you know, like coffee pots is one of the very important high selling item in US, and it is used across retail customers like home and as well as in the all the offices across United States or Canada or Europe per se. And this customer have a huge sales volume, huge number of customers, and geography to cover, and they need to have a team which will be operating operating in such a way that the reliability or the availability, all these observability of the systems are all giving the right kind of result for them to move. And we started a journey way back in 2017 when we took the transition of the project, and it was more of a data center managed project with a lot of different stacks and a lot of different internal teams, which is typically a managed services team we have. And we are handling, as I said, the peak period, handling the manual way that we do. And then like slowly we observed that we need to actually bring in efficiency in the system with a new way of working, so that we will able to achieve and give a value to the customer, which is everlasting. Customer focused delivery approach of our core value was one of the trigger for us to move towards giving them a right kind of value that they should get out of it. And then we slowly looked around the different aspects, and then we checked like we need to move this operations move to cloud. We bring in automations and around infrastructure as a code. We need to bring automations in the CI/CD. We operate in a more automated fashion. We constantly reduce the toil. We constantly eliminate the alerts. So there are various aspects that we looked into it, and so we can cover in the next couple of slides on those, and I'll go over. So when you have look at this, you can find these customers as various business functions inside it, and those business functions are all working in the silos when you took over, and we need to create a integrated or a connected map for the different functions, so that we can bring in our efficiency on the transformation, and our SRE principles will able to help to achieve the target that we achieve the target here. Next slides will be covering the details about different functions and the core technology that we use, and they have content and commerce board, and sites will be available in multiple platforms. So this is the client landscape that I wanted to just go over. The client has around 400K orders per month. They're delivering. They have a 17 million page views per month, and there are around 2.4 million customers per month who uses their platform for the and that is delivered. This is the delivery of the e-commerce platform. They have a retail on the store counters, but this is what we're talking about on the e-commerce platform. And they need a 24/7 support, and the deployments was initially were not happening in the bi-weekly fashion. Our SRE principles slowly brought into the bi-weekly fashion, and we're managing around 250 odd servers across different cloud different regions or that we have. Next slides will cover around what is the impact that we created for them. So as I said, like we have correlations around alerts. So when we started the journey, we found that there are a lot of alerts which are there in the system which are non-relevant, and we need to get rid of those alerts because they're no longer meaningful for the customer. And then we also have found that there are some new alerts which are meaningful and should come into the system. Similarly, we found a lot of manual tasks that we are doing, and we should reduce those. So we identified in a constant fashion to reduce the toil. As I said in my toil reduction section, how it should be integrated part and a continuous journey. And so when we implemented all these principles into the project, what we found is the result is remarkable. As you can see, when we correlated alerts and have the right kind of actionable alerts for us, monitoring is moved into a SLA-based monitoring with a 360-degree monitoring view. and toils are continuously being reduced, we see, and the more features and quality of the product has improved, we could see that a 15% reduction in production incidents across the platform, which is a remarkable improvement. And we also see that 40% reduce in alert count. The number of alerts that was coming to a system, it has reduced by 40%, which gives our monitoring team to implement more scope into picture. And that is because we removed all the unnecessary alert and bringing the right kind of alert into the system. We also moved and reduced the 85% reduce in the total error count because our code quality improved. Our automation brought in a lot of efficiencies into the system which was lacking, and those are all giving us this stability point of view. We also found a 50% reduction in production cutover window. As I said, like we're doing a deployment when it started around a day, which is right now we are doing half a day because there are multiple servers, and and even though it's automated fashion, there are a couple of layers of the architecture to be deployed. So we're taking everything into consideration with the two different regions that we're deploying. And then we have 100% SOP documented for all. We reduce the toil by 200 hours, and we've automated all our report. We have auto healing feature into system, and we have brought in architectural reform, and in a cloud, when we moved to cloud, we brought in a lot of architectural reforms, and 25% improvement in the cart page load time, which is again another improvement that helped in the business. So these are the kind of impact that we created in the project, which will be definitely, if you implement SRE's way of working, you will also start getting results in your system, and which will give you a lot of such kind of benefits, which will give you a boost for you to think next how to improve again.
Thank you for talking about this.